Welcome to Close Call. So, today we're going to be talking with Nick Persico, the Director of Sales here at Close, and he's going to be telling us all about multi channel or omni channel sequences. Why is this such an important thing? And how each of us can use them in our sales sequences as well. He's going to be teaching us all about that, and especially considering that recently Close has had a very significant update that now allows you to include calling in your sequences in Close. So Nick is also going to be showing us how to use that. So maybe to get us started, Nick, maybe you could just give us some quick thoughts about multi-channel sequences, the idea of this, a little bit of the history of it, and maybe why is this such an important factor for sales teams today?
Yeah, it's a great question. The concept of a sequence within sales has been around for a long time. It's just relatively new that we have software to handle the different steps of the sequence on behalf of the salesperson, to make it easier for the salesperson to handle it. Because historically, let's say if we go back 10 years ago, basically you wrote down the sequence of events that could take place. So the first day you get a lead, you're going to call them. Then if they don't answer, you're going to do if this, then that. And then you follow that over some period of time using follow up as your main means or tactic to get somebody to respond to you and then eventually work them through, your sales process. And historically, it was a mixture of mainly calls, actual phone calls and email was more of a recap, sort of, handling things that have already been agreed to over the phone type of thing. It's not like it is today where actually a lot of salespeople are making progress or moving the ball forward via email. We didn't do this as much in sales as we do now. And then obviously the sort of mass adoption of Zoom has
Mm.
made scheduling calls and scheduling meetings way more critical and a way bigger point of progress within a sales process is when you book a meeting. That's really where the action, takes place. It doesn't really happen serendipitously on a call when so that doesn't happen as much. It's more, can we get the meeting via email? And then when the meeting happens, and then after you establish that contact, then you can make more progress via email. That's the way things have gone the last few years and will continue, I think, over time. So to bring it all back from that history lesson, it's really about taking the concept of playbooks, which has been around for a long time, and building that into software that's super easy for a sales team to put the skeleton together. And then the software will tell the salesperson when they should do X at Y time. And
Hmm.
that's essentially what the sequence tool in Close is and other sequence products that are out in the market. And why this is important and why a sales team should use a tool like this is because the channels of which you communicate with people are changing and vary a lot more than they used to. So it's not just phone and email anymore. It's like I mentioned earlier with Zoom, with Twitter, with LinkedIn, with SMS. I mean, there's multiple channels now where you can reach a prospect, and that prospect is actually becoming more open with being contacted through those channels as well. It's a two-way street. Back in the day, like sending somebody a text message probably was not appropriate in a business context, but I think it's becoming more appropriate and actually preferred by people in some instances, depending on your industry and the exact persona that you're selling to. So because these things are changing, a salesperson has to be good at communicating on a variety of these different channels and then figuring out in which order in the sequence that it's best to use or deploy that channel as a tactic or strategy to get somebody to respond to you. So that's the history of sequences and why it's important. And what we've done in Close is essentially unlock another channel that you can use, which is the phone as part of your sequence to conduct that outreach. So when you create a sequence in Close, you'll now have the option to switch between sending an email in an automated way or queuing up a task to call somebody. And the way that we've handled the call task is a bit of an innovation, in my opinion, of how we've chosen to do this in relation to other products that we've seen in the market. And we're going to go through that today.
Yeah, absolutely. That's super cool. And it's so cool to see as well how, as these new channels are opening up, that we're continuing at Close to open up these new channels for our customers so that they can do their best job while the software supports them in that way. That's super cool. So then maybe could you walk us through how this works in close? How do sequences with calling work in close?
Sure. Here's a quick run through of how sequences work within Close. So here, when I open up Close, I'm in my inbox view. Inbox contains all of the incoming items and other types of follow-ups that I have to tackle. So things like missed calls, voicemails, incoming email, SMS, as well as tasks that people assign to me within the CRM, or opportunity follow up reminders where I said a deal was going to close today, but it hasn't yet. Nothing's been updated on it. So Close will automatically tell you that you need to update that opportunity. So these are what I would call your highest priority items that you need to take care of. Within sequences, what we've done, and this is the innovative piece that I think really differentiates us from the market of other sequence sales tools, is that we separate out the sequence tasks from these very important incoming tasks. And we also segment and separate the sequence tasks by the particular type of sequence that you need to do. So, in a lot of cases, you'll have multiple sequences for different types of leads or different campaigns that you're running. So, for instance, you'll have a sequence for all the people that you demoed and they haven't responded to you since. So, you have your demo follow up. You have your new leads that you haven't talked before that you're rolling them in a sequence and you're trying to get them to respond. You have your customers that you closed a year ago and you just wanted to follow up with them casually to see how things are going. So you have different contexts and therefore you have different sequences for the people you're reaching out to. So what we've done is separated those out into different call lists or task lists, if you will, to go through and work. So in this example, I've got marketing folks. So these are people that I've deemed within my CRM, within the contacts view that we have within Close. And I've created a smart view or a saved list of all of the people that are in a qualified lead. So the lead status is qualified, and they have the word marketing in their title. And that gives me these 5 people as an example. So what I did is before this demo is that I enrolled them into the sequence here, and then they started going into the marketing folks sequence. So when I go to the marketing folks sequence that I have here, I get quite a few very important KPIs right at the top. They tell me how many are active, how many are enrolled, and the key metric within sequences, in our opinion, and therefore it gets emulated into the product because we quite often enforce our way of thinking and our sales methodology into the product. I think that's another thing that differentiates Close from a lot of other products out there. And that KPI is the response rate. So we think that is the key thing that you need to determine if a sequence is going well or not. What is the percentage of folks that you enroll in a sequence? How many respond? That is a key metric that we care about. And then obviously other ones like error and bounce or other notifiers on really that speak to the quality of the contacts that you're enrolling into the sequence. And then average response time is sort of an indicator of where in those steps that they respond. We go even more granular into this approach by showing you a step by step of where they respond to each step in the sequence. So you can figure out which step is the most important as part of that. But back to the task part of this, what you'll see is that if you have any call steps in your sequences, we will automatically queue up the ones that you need to call with for any of the queued up steps, and then you just hit start calling, and then it'll go through the power dialer experience that we have and have had in Close for a number of years, and it just makes it super easy for a salesperson to understand. Okay, the sequence that I'm working through right now is marketing folks that has a certain script or certain way that I need to approach that, and then when you go through, that'll knock down the to do list here, and then you go on to the next one that has it. So to summarize all of that in terms of a daily workflow for a salesperson, here's what you should be doing in Close. You should start your day by going into your inbox, knocking out all these tasks because these what we've deemed the highest priority because people are reaching out to you, whether it be an email, a call, or an SMS message. You have your opportunity follow-ups, and then you also have any of your due or overdue tasks that people assign to you. Those are the most important in terms of a salesperson's priority. Then next, you go into your opportunity pipeline and make sure this is updated because it serves 2 things. One, it keeps your most important opportunities fresh and clean and makes you sure you're following up with them. And then 2, it keeps this updated in terms of your responsibility as a salesperson and to your team to have a very updated pipeline so management can see what is expected to close or what you've closed so far. And then you go down into your sequences and work through those tasks that are here in terms of a call. So that is the workflow that you should follow as a salesperson of using close. Super straightforward and easy, and you're accomplishing all of this in just a few screens. Now, setting up a sequence, if you go to edit, you'll see here I have these steps. I have step one is a call, step two is an email, and step three is an email. And then you can see these additional steps that we added here for an email. And then now you can assign a call, and you have a couple of options around that as well as the schedule. So that is a quick summary of how sequences with the added new functionality of being able to add a call step to a sequence within Close.
That's awesome. So let me ask you then, what can sales leaders and sales reps, you talked a little bit about the daily workflow of a sales rep and how this adds into that. What can especially sales leaders accomplish when they're creating sequences for their team that include both calling and email?
So your job as a sales manager is the constant refinement and improvement of the overall metrics within that sequence, right? So I think of that in a you being valuable to the salesperson in a couple ways. One, you're looking at the response rate and making sure that that percentage is high enough to where all the effort that the salesperson is doing is worthwhile. Because if they're enrolling all these people into the sequence and 10% respond, that, in my opinion, is not worth the salesperson that you're paying or the salesperson's time to get anything done. So you got to work to get that response rate higher. And typically, you got to work backwards. So, okay, if they're not responding, what is the content that we're sending out to them? What does the emails look like? How frequently is this step going? Work through just sort of the practical nature of and putting yourself in the shoes of a prospect in this sequence. What is their experience like? And do you agree with that experience? Like just simple, working through that content. And then to go back even further than that, who is being enrolled into the sequence? Where are these leads coming from? What is the quality of these emails? What is the error rate or the bounce rate on the emails for it? Work backwards to the beginning, and then you usually find what is breaking in that whole process that would show you that this response rate would be lower than what you would expect it to be. And then down the line, you then get this step by step report where you can see, okay, you're getting most of the responses in step one, but you're not getting anything in step two or step three. So it's probably the content of those emails that need to be fixed. So this report and the reporting that we give you within the sequences is helping you determine what needs to be fixed within it. And there's always something to fix and improve. So we're
Hmm.
giving you sort of this directional insights that can help your salespeople do a better job within this. And this is my role that I do with our team. So if I look at our sequence for what new 14-day free trials get within the closed sales process, I'll look at what the sales reps are putting content wise into the sequences and look at the response rates at certain steps and review that content and then give them feedback on how they should improve it. I put all of the responsibility and creativity at the salesperson here at Close to figure that out and work and test things out because being creative and figuring these things out on their own is, I think, one of the things that you can do to really empower a salesperson to get better at their craft, but also make their craft less of a exercise in mindless repetition. You want to avoid that as best you can. And sales is about repetition, and sometimes it can get robotic at times. So why not use one of these things that you have at your disposal, which is giving them the ability to curate their own content and their own information, and then just be a person that you use for feedback as they do it, and then also through the success that those salespeople encounter with certain pieces of content, you can go have them share that intel with their fellow salespeople to have the overall team's content quality increase. But that's how I approach it myself, and also how I would tell any manager to approach it as well.
Excellent. That makes sense. So, last question here. What are some best practices for setting up a sales sequence, or what can someone do to really make sure that their effort counts when they do this?
Yeah, so this is general advice that I give to everybody that's setting up a sequence, regardless of what tool that you're using. And it really starts with what is the basis of entry into the sequence. So, what is causing them to be enrolled in the sequence? And examples of that are an inbound lead. Somebody reached out to you and they want to get more information. They started a free trial if you're selling some sort of SaaS product with a free trial. If it's in an inbound context, then what you need to do is the first step of that sequence, in my opinion, needs to be calling them. It needs to be proactive outreach to get a hold of them now, to qualify them and figure out what's going on. So step one should be a call or some sort of content that is circulated around getting them onto a scheduled call, right? And I still believe calling works the best for this in an inbound context. But if they don't respond and then you send an email immediately after that with a link to a calendar or some times to schedule a meeting, that you'll usually have very good results. In the opposite context, which is the majority outbound, the first outreach likely needs to be an email, or you can use other channels, LinkedIn, if that works really well for your industry, or other places that could work well. Like if you're selling to brands, it could be DMing them on Instagram,
Mhm.
or TikTok, or, whatever. I'm not big on those types of platforms myself, but once you get them into the CRM, your initial outreach need to be all about providing value. So your first thing is not, hey, I'm Nick and I'm selling this thing and you need to get on a call with me so you can hear my pitch. No, it needs to be, I'm Nick with so and so. We help companies do X. And as a result, here is some intel, industry insights, something of value to the prospect to where they receive this information and say, okay, this person is adding value. They're either helping me save time, telling me something I didn't know before, helping me be smarter, or they're making my job easier. That's very nice. I like this person and I like the company because they didn't ask for anything in return. They're just giving me information. And
Mhm.
sometimes that will result in them responding positively very quickly to get on a call and learn more about what you're selling because they went to your website and saw what you have, and there just happens to be an overlapping need that they have right now, and they'll respond positively. But in most cases, they're going to take that information and not reply. So the key is to follow up. So then you follow up with a call, let's say, and say, "Hey, I sent you over this insights report from our industry. Did you check it out? What do you think?" And then you start the conversation from there. Or you email them again with the next insights report. You hit them with value two or three times in a repeated standpoint. And then once you've established that core foundation of value that you just provided, then you go in and make the pitch. That
Mhm.
is, I think, what will yield results today. Because I don't know about your inboxes, but my inbox is full with people saying, I'm so and so, and here's my pitch. You need to drop everything and hear my pitch right now. And no, I don't. I'm busy. I got other stuff going on. I'm going to pick and choose what products I'm going to look at because the internet is full of information that I can use to figure out which products I need to look at any particular time that I'm interested in them. The internet is very good at helping figure out where my demand needs to go, right? Like I can
Yep.
Google tools for X, and I will get a litany of options to choose from to look at that. So what you really need to be focused on is getting top of mind when that demand occurs. And I think the best way to do that is deliver value first, ask nothing in return, and then they'll come eventually as you continue to follow up over time. And I think that's the key to outbound today and will become even more important over time. So when you take all of that advice and say, okay, Nick, that's all great, but how do I put this into a sequence? It's simple. We'll do outbound as the main example because that's what most people are doing and need to do. The first one needs to be a email with that value, and then maybe a second or third one with that value. You know more about your industry. You probably know what will play well. Then you probably loop in a call to that to confirm that they got the information and see what they thought about the information. And then you just continuously follow up over time. Then after you get the initial response, that sequence should end. That first sequence should just be about initial response. Then once you get the response and then work through the next step of the process, which is usually an intro call, a qualifying call, and then based off the outcome of that should start another sequence, right? So you should separate out the different milestones within a sales process into different sequences. To have one sequence that handles all aspects and all milestones of your sales process is too confusing, and I don't think the message that is needed in the moment will match it because you're trying to do too much in a single sequence. So you need to separate these things out into different contexts. As for the main question I get all the time of what is the right cadence of time to use. The method that I use is in week 1 of being enrolled, you reach out twice. The second week, you reach out once. And then in the third week, you do nothing. The fourth week, you reach out again. And then you start to double the time that you reach out over time. So let's
Hmm.
break that down. Week 1, twice. Week 2, once. Week 3, nothing. Week 4, one. And then week 8. So I'm saying a whole month later, you reach out again. And then you reach out 2 months later, and then 4 months later, and then 8 months later, right? So you keep widening the amount of time that you reach out. And I think this tactic works really well for staying relevant and getting a higher response rate than not. And you should follow up indefinitely until you get a response.
Absolutely. Great. Well, thanks so much, Nick, for joining us. We now have a full understanding of sales sequences, especially this idea of multi channel sequences. And of course, all of you who are watching can try this out in Close for 14 days for free, and we'll add the link to that to do that down below. So thanks for watching.